Bravo, Canon. Bravo. Okay, after much speculation and much waiting, Canon today has finally released the specs and price of the much anticipated, eagerly awaited Canon R5c. And I've got to say right off the bat, this camera is just, Canon has done it. It is a home run camera as far as I'm concerned. This is everything that I was really looking for from the Canon R5c. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know one of the things I was really hoping the R5c would be is that perfect, wonderful hybrid beast. And Canon has done it. They have actually released the camera that I've personally been waiting for since the Canon 5D Mark II. It is an incredible photo camera that is an extremely capable, professional, cinema ready to go camera as well. I'm so excited by what I've seen from the release of this camera, including the price. And what I want to do today is just kind of tell you a real quick video going over my initial thoughts on the Canon R5c and what I see right off the bat as the top features that I think will impact you as a filmmaker. Now, there's a lot to uncover. This is a huge release. There's a lot of stuff to go in there. I'm not going to talk about every single aspect of the Canon R5c, but I am going to talk about what I consider the top bits and my initial impression of it. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to say it is a brilliant, brilliant design for the camera. It is able to marry that very, very good ergonomic Canon R5 body, and it basically has that cool little marriage of it to a C70 type body, which means we have active cooling, no threat of overheating, but this still looks like a very, very capable and comfortable camera if you are a photographer as well. And most importantly, the thing I was really the most worried about, they kept the EVF. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Canon, for keeping the EVF. I made a video a little while back saying I think it would have been ridiculous to have made a 45 megapixel photo camera without an EVF, and Canon thankfully did that. I am so happy to have an EVF on the camera, in addition to the active cooling system that lets us shoot basically without any overheating from what the initial results are. And this is by far the biggest drawback to the Canon R5. Great camera, but you did have to do workarounds for the overheating. If it's just switched, if the body takes care of it, that right there is an incredible and amazing and very, very exciting thing. The other thing about this is I first saw that's amazing is the price. Now, I made a prediction that this would come in at $4,500, and my prediction was spot on. This comes in right at $4,500, which means it's about $600 more than the Canon R5, but it's about $1,000 cheaper than the C70. It's a great range, and I think for what this camera offers, that is a perfect price point. I have to give Canon much, much plaudits again for making this camera very reasonably priced. I was a little bit worried with the chip shortages and stuff like that they would jack the price up, but the specs you're getting on this camera are fantastic, and the price point I think is perfect. It's exactly what I think it really should be. Now, a couple things that I initially saw and top features that kind of blew me away. Dual gain ISO. What? This is really surprising. I did not expect to see this from something that was supposed to have the same sensor as the Canon R5, but they do say there's a dual gain ISO if you're shooting in log 3 and log of 800 and 3200. And it's different depending on the profiles you're going. I'm not going to go too deep in that now, but that is fantastic because having dual gain is just one of those things that in modern cameras has become so common, and it is so useful because we always find ourselves pushing our camera's sensors as far as they can go to get as much out of it. And this is a great surprise. I was very, very happy to see that. Was totally not expecting that in any way, shape, or form. I also love the fact that on top of the camera, they have a dedicated video and photo switch. And what is really, really creative and awesome about the R5c is I've actually did a video about the Canon R5 not having a dedicated video photo switch. So this for me is just icing on the cake. But what's really clever about the Canon R5c is that when you switch it into photo mode, you get the traditional Canon photo memory. But when you switch it to video mode, it switches to what you'd expect from the Canon cinema line of video menus like the C70, the C300, the C500. And this is a brilliant, brilliant move because Both those menu systems are great. And as someone that used the C300 a lot on a lot of shoots, I love having that system. And man, I just never expected them to come out with a system that let me get both menu systems in one camera. It's a really smart move. It is very, very something I'm going to look forward and definitely pumped by that. Now, I was surprised that there is no IBIS in the camera. Now, I can understand this is partially to do with how the sensors go and to get the best image from the camera sometimes, but I really did like the in-body stabilization on the Canon R5, and I'm a little bit surprised that it's not there on the R5c. Now, they do say the R5c does have digital stabilization, but in my opinion, with the Canon C300 specifically, this is a very mixed bag. So I'm going to reserve judgment on the digital stabilization just because I have had shots on the Canon C300 that got that weird warp stabilizer effect. If you're using digital stabilization, I don't quite trust it. Now, maybe this new generation is better, but I will reserve judgment on that until I see what comes out. Now, other thing I thought was an incredible feature, thank you Canon for doing this, is now we have RAW recording, but we also have XFAVC, and we have internal 12-bit RAW inside the camera. Yes, thank you. XFAVC is so much easier to edit on Adobe Premiere and other editing programs. It's so much better than the H.265 that comes with the Canon R5 now. I am very excited about this. You wouldn't think I'd be that excited, but if you ever tried to edit Canon R5 files, they are a bit of a cumbersome beast, and this could be something that'd be so nice to just plug these in and not have to make proxies all the time just to edit basic 4K files. They also add great things on there. False color and waveform are part of the camera. I really did not expect to get false color internally on the Canon R5c. This is great. False color, if you use it, is one of those things that are absolutely fantastic. And waveform, it just goes without saying, is such a critical thing to making sure you're getting the proper and the right exposure when you're out in the field running and gutting. Now, one thing too that I'm super excited about, thank you for doing this, Canon, is they have a shutter angle option in the camera. And if you know anything about shooting video, you can set your camera to either shutter speed or shutter angle. Shutter angle is so fantastic. I love having a shutter angle. It's a much more cinematic way of approaching how you do your film. And it's also very important if you're a person that likes to switch between frame rates. So for instance, if I'm shooting at 60 frames a second, I need a different shutter speed than if I'm shooting at 24 frames a second. The great thing about a shutter angle is you just set it to 180 degrees and the camera angle will go accordingly. This is a huge thing. I use it all the time. Anytime I have a camera that has a shutter angle, I am so excited that the Canon R5c has a shutter angle. Another great thing that is in there is the Anamorphic Desqueeze. This is a really great feature because there are so many great affordable anamorphic lenses coming out, and it just allows that much versatility for the Canon R5c, and it also allows the Canon R5c to have its place, I consider, as a really top grade B or C camera for bigger film productions that might be using anamorphic lenses. It's so nice to know you can throw an anamorphic on there and you have the Anamorphic Desqueeze on it, which is something the Panasonic cameras have been doing for a while. It's a really, really great thing, and it's really, really nice. Now, another thing that I think is just awesome that is available in the Canon C300 that I just was blown away that they decided to do on the Canon R5c was they let you do magnification during filming. Now, what this means is that once you hit record, you can actually punch in and check things for focus while you are filming. And this is actually something that if you ever use a camera that has this, you will use all the time. I know whenever I'm shooting, I like to basically confirm my focus all the time. I'm just always constantly worrying about it because an out of focus picture is the one thing you can't fix. And yeah, the autofocus system on the Canon R5s and the Canon systems are great, but I use a lot of manual focus lens even to this day. And having the ability to punch in during filming is a godsend. It's something I absolutely love about the Canon cinema line, and Canon is awesome for including it in the R5c. Now, I was a little bit surprised about the dual card slots of the Canon R5c. They did keep the standard ones that are now in the Canon R5. And I get it, they were trying to save space. It would have been nice to maybe have 2 CF Express cards in there so you could get everything the same. But while that's handy because you can still do proxy recording, you are limited in things you can record on standard CF cards just because of the nature of a CF card. So There is dual recording in there. It is slot recording, but I guarantee you as we get in there, there's going to be some features you can't dual record at the same time, which is just a nice thing to have for safety. I was a little bit surprised by that, but I'm not going to complain too much because you still can get dual recording and a safety one, but sometimes it's nice to have both slots and not be limited in any way, shape, or form from your card slot. And of course, if we're talking about the Canon R5c, a top feature and something I'm so excited about is the 8K 60 frames per second RAW. That is mind-blowing for a camera that comes under $5,000. And why I think this is really important, why this is something that, if you're thinking about getting a camera right now, the R5c is such a good option, is this gives you lifespan to your camera. I'll be honest, there's not a lot of things I want to shoot in 8K or 8K RAW today. It's just too much file space. It's a pain in the butt to deal with in post. But that being said, 3 years from now, I might very well be recording most of the stuff I want in 8K. And having a camera that can future-proof itself is very, very important. And it actually makes me feel that much better about investing in a Canon R5c because with the photo options, which are just absolutely fantastic, and now with video specs that I think will last me for several years, I know I'm getting a camera that can spread out over years and I don't have to replace in 2 years. I really think this is a camera that will be very, very good and hold out for a long way. Now, one thing about the Canon R5c, I love the body shape, but be aware, it is a battery drinking beast. So we're already seeing now that the battery limitations on this thing can be pretty extreme, especially if you are shooting at 8K. So I would recommend if you are thinking about getting a Canon R5c, you need to either get a USB pack that can plug into the USB drive or do what I do and you want a V-mount solution. And honestly, most video stuff I do now has a V-mount anyway, so the battery limitation isn't that big a deal for me. But it is something that I think you need to be aware because it's looking like this thing is going to drink batteries right there on the same level as the Blackmagic, which is a consideration when you're thinking about pricing out your kit because you need to make sure you have some kind of battery solution in addition to the body. The other big surprise, and really the last major feature and surprise that I was a little taken aback by, was the fact that they are keeping the micro HDMI in the camera. Now, I was really, really hoping for a full-size HDMI port just because I really don't like working with micro HDMIs. They're so flimsy. But that being said, I have gotten my camera up with HDMI locks on it. I've been using my R5 for over a year very, very heavily and have yet to damage or break even one HDMI cable. So if you manage it right, it's not a deal breaker, but it would have been nice to see that. But I also understand that that is one of those things I'm willing to accept that drawback to the camera just because of the amazing price point it got and the features it got. I'm not complaining, but it would have been nice to see that. And I was a little surprised by that as well. So really, in my conclusion, man, Canon just hit it out of the park on this one. Now, it's not perfect, but as a longtime Canon shooter, I cannot tell you, it is so refreshing to get a Canon camera that hits so many great parts without the famous, dreaded Canon cripple. So as you all know, I have been waiting for the ultimate hybrid camera, and it looks like Canon has finally done it. In today's world, when the budgets are getting tighter and tighter and our crews keep getting more and more compressed, I have had more and more clients hire me as a professional photographer, but they also want to make sure they get professional cinema stuff at the same time. And now to finally have a camera that when I'm running and on tight budgets, I can get both of those without literally taking it out of my hand is... It's just amazing, and I'm so excited that it's going to be here in our hands in just a few months. So Canon, bravo, bravo. You have finally given us a camera that really knocks it out of the park, right out of the gate, and I'm so excited to get this camera and see what we can do with it as we go forward. Anyway, guys, I'd love to know what you think about this camera and what your favorite parts are. Please leave me any comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And yeah, guys, go out there and keep on shooting. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.